The story opens at Morning Rock Park, where two rangers, Chief Mike Cortez and Neil Morris, respond to a call about an infected dog. They find the animal locked inside a truck container. Mike tells Neil to cover him and act if the dog turns aggressive. Neil agrees, but when the dog suddenly lunges at Mike, Neil freezes and cannot bring himself to pull the trigger. The dog bites Mike before a third ranger, John Gibson, steps in and ends the threat. Mike is visibly angry from a distance, but he understands why Neil hesitated. Neil's teenage son, Ben, has been missing for days with no leads despite an extensive search, and the stress has left Neil unable to focus on anything. Mike quietly forgives him and decides not to report the bite, not wanting the extra paperwork.
Look, calling it in is gonna just mean more paperwork.
They leave the dog's body for John to handle and head back. In the car, Mike tells Neil he understands what he and his wife are going through and suggests he take some time off. Neil is privately considering quitting the ranger job altogether, but Mike tells him not to decide anything yet, just rest. Back at the station, Mike gets basic treatment for his wound. His daughter Olivia worries he should see a real doctor, but Mike insists he's already vaccinated and there's no risk of rabies. Olivia, who was close friends with Ben, goes to comfort Neil, returning Ben's watch to him with a hug. Later, as Neil rides home with John, they pass a sign warning that rabies has been spreading nearby. John talks throughout the drive, but Neil stays silent. He has barely spoken to anyone since Ben disappeared. Eventually, Neil asks to walk the rest of the way alone. John offers to help search for Ben again if Neil ever gets a new lead, then lets him go. Neil thanks him quietly and walks off, gun in hand. At home, his wife Abby is still struggling to cope, spending most of her time asleep or sedated with calming pills. Their marriage is strained, but they're trying to hold on. Abby has arranged Ben's photos and belongings on the table, and when Neil tries to move them, she stops him. These objects are what let her keep hoping Ben will come back. A small argument follows and Neil goes to bed alone. The next morning, he wakes to find Abby asleep on the couch instead, a quiet sign of how fragile things have become. Neil looks at his gun, then walks into the woods. Brief flashes hint that something happened the day Ben left, though the full picture isn't clear yet. By a lake, Neil sits lost in thought, remembering the day he gave Ben their family's old analog watch, a memory that now causes him real pain. Overwhelmed, he throws the watch into the water and pulls out his gun, his thoughts turning dark. Before he can act, he hears a girl screaming for help, drowning nearby. Neil dives in and pulls her to shore, but when he sees her face up close, he's horrified. Her skin is badly damaged, clearly infected with something. She suddenly attacks him, and Neil defends himself, striking her with a stone to stop the threat. It becomes clear she's been transformed by some unknown virus into something no longer fully human. Shaken, Neil rushes home. Checking his gun, he finds it empty. There's no ammunition anywhere in the house. Before he can think it through, an infected person breaks into the house. Neil fights him off, and when a second one follows, he handles that threat too. Abby, still groggy from her medication, is hurried into the car as Neil decides to get them out of the area. Driving through town, he sees infected people attacking the remaining survivors in the streets. Abby, barely conscious in the back seat, listens as Neil tells her everything has spiraled out of control. He pulls off to an isolated spot to think. When Abby finally wakes properly and asks why he looks so frightened, Neil explains that some kind of virus is turning people violent. She doesn't believe it's possible, but Neil reminds her that rabies had already been spreading locally and wonders aloud if the two might be connected. He has no real answers, only the need to keep them both safe. His attempts to reach anyone on the radio or by calling for help go nowhere. They decide to return home for supplies. Neil tells Abby to wait in the car while he gathers essentials. But when he comes back out, she's gone. He finds her inside, in Ben's room, refusing to leave in case their son comes home and finds an empty house. Neil insists it isn't safe to stay, and Abby agrees to go only after leaving Ben a note. When Neil presses her again about the missing bullets, she finally admits she threw them all away. She was afraid he might hurt himself out of grief. It sparks another argument. As Abby gathers a few of Ben's things, Neil tries reaching John on the radio, but it cuts out before he can explain anything. They leave for Mike's place, hoping for help. On the way, running low on gas, Neil pulls into a station and tells Abby to stay in the car, warning her to run if he doesn't come back. Inside, he finds the counter empty and grabs fuel cans, a lighter, and cigarettes. A worker grabs his shoulder from behind, infected. Neil pulls away just in time and uses the fuel to stop him and escape. Meanwhile, John arrives at the lake where the infected girl attacked Neil earlier and finds her body, visibly shaken by what he sees. Back at the station, Neil pulls the car closer so he and Abby can load up on supplies. Abby spots the burned body outside. Neil tells her not to look. Before they leave, Neil leaves money on the counter. Even now, he won't take anything without paying, for reasons that only become clear later. John, growing worried, goes to check on Neil's house and finds the bodies inside, getting no response when he tries the radio again. On the road, Abby asks what these infected people have actually become. Neil struggles to explain it, only that the infection seems to strip away everything human, leaving pure aggression behind. She apologizes for hiding the bullets, explaining she only did it out of fear for him, and promises to stay strong from here on so they can get through this together. It gives Neil a small measure of comfort. After a long drive, they finally reach Mike's house. Neil hands Abby a knife for protection and goes inside alone, calling out for Mike. He finds Camilla in the kitchen, but as she turns toward him, her face shows clear signs of infection, and she attacks. In the struggle, Neil finds bullets on the floor, loads his gun, and stops her. The gunshot brings Abby running inside despite his warning. At the same moment, Olivia, also infected, attacks Neil. Abby begs him not to hurt her, but then Mike himself appears and lunges at Neil, forcing him to fire again. When Neil looks up, Abby and Olivia have fled the house. He chases after them, slips, and blacks out. He dreams of Ben, but in the dream, Ben has become one of the infected too. Neil wakes the next morning surrounded by several infected people, including some wearing ranger uniforms, his own colleagues. He tricks one into a bear trap, fights off the rest, and escapes. He finally finds Abby. She seems fine at first, but the instant she sees him, her behavior shifts. Neil manages to subdue her, gets her into the car, and buckles her in so she can't hurt herself or anyone else. He won't leave her behind. After driving a while, he stops, completely lost, unsure what to do now that even Abby seems to have turned. John keeps searching for him. When Neil finally reaches him on the radio, something is wrong. John can hear Neil clearly, but Neil can't make out a word John says. The voice is broken and distorted. Neil climbs a nearby radio tower for a stronger signal, fighting off another infected man already up there and using his own gun to stop him. He tries the hospital next, but hits the same problem. He can hear them, but can't understand what they're saying, catching only an instruction to stay where he is. Certain he needs to find a cure for Abby, Neil keeps moving. He reaches John again, and this time hearing his voice brings him to tears. John tells him he can still help and asks Neil to bring Abby home. Neil follows the instructions and pulls up to his house, where police cars are already parked outside. He gets Abby out of the car, fully infected by now in his eyes. But when John steps outside, Neil is horrified. John and all the other rangers appear infected too, transformed like everyone else. Panicking, Neil raises his gun at John, but before he can act, a shot hits his own arm. He drops to the ground, and his eyes land on a mirror nearby. What he sees stops him cold. In the reflection, he looks infected too. This is where the film reveals its devastating truth. There was never a virus. There were never any zombies. Everything happening was unfolding entirely inside Neil's mind, a complete psychotic break brought on by unbearable grief. Ben was never missing. He had died days earlier. On the day he tried to run away, Neil chased him up a hill, and in the struggle to stop him, Ben slipped and fell. Neil blamed himself instantly and completely completely, and in his shock, his mind simply refused to register what had happened. He could not see Ben's body lying there, as though his own brain had erased it to survive the moment. Back in the present, Abby desperately tries to pull Neil back to reality, but he can no longer tell what's real and what isn't. As he turns toward her, seemingly ready to hurt her too, John fires to protect her. Neil dies from the wound. Abby is left having lost both her son and now her husband, the film closing on a quiet, devastating note.